Come on into the place. Yes, into the house. Thank you so much. You know, one of my favorite things is looking out from this high place and seeing all of you. My heart always opens when I see this place just filled. And again, it's not because I want the building to be filled, but it's when I look out and I see all of God's beauty and energy and these wonderful souls, these lights of being that are just shining and willing and able and ready to do a great work. That always warms my heart and it makes what I do worthwhile. So once again, I want to say Happy Resurrection Day. Yes, this is the day that the Lord has made, and we are truly doing what? Rejoicing in it. We are rejoicing in it. You see, this is the day that makes every day that we experience any kind of challenge, every day of hardship, every day of suffering, every day of limiting experiences, this is the day that makes all those other days worthwhile. Yes. You know why? Because on this day, several years ago, thousands perhaps, on this day it was shown to us that nothing and no one can stand in our way or keep us down. Yes. That's powerful, right? Nothing and no one can stand in my way or keep me down. In fact, I want you to have an affirmation that I want you to say. I want you to affirm, through the resurrecting power of Christ, nothing and no one can stand in my way or keep me down. Now, that's the truth. And normally I reserve the affirmation for the end part of the service. But Spirit said, no, let's affirm that truth at the very beginning. Yes. That through the resurrecting power of the Christ, nothing and no one can stand in my way or keep me down. See, that's a powerful thought to hold in consciousness. And it's a powerful thought or place from which to live your life. With that energy, that consciousness, nothing and no one can stand in my way nor keep me down. Especially if and when we have raised our consciousness to various heights of spiritual mastery. See, there's a little caveat. You have to attach that belief, that faith, that thought to a spiritual truth, right? So that it's not just you saying that, but if and when you are able to raise your consciousness to that level of truth, that nothing and no one can stand in my way through the resurrecting power of God, when that truth becomes a part of you, then it will be demonstrated and manifested. When you raise your consciousness to various heights of spiritual mastery. That's what we're trying to do, right? And so let's listen to the power that we were given as a result of this day. And I'm reading from Matthew 27, verses 57 through 66, and then chapter 28, 1 through 10. And Jesus has been crucified. And so this is what takes place. As evening approached, Joseph, a rich man from Arimathea, who was one of Jesus' followers, went to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. And Pilate issued an order to release it to him. Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a long linen cloth. He placed it in his own new tomb, which had been carved out of the rock. Then he rolled a great stone across the entrance as he left. Both Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting nearby watching. The next day, on the first day of the Passover ceremonies, The leading priests and Pharisees went to see Pilate. They told him, "Sir, we remember what the deceiver once said while he was alive. After 3 days, I will be raised from the dead. So we request that you seal the tomb until the 3rd day. This will prevent his disciples from coming and stealing his body and then telling everyone that he came back to life. If that happens, we'll be worse off than we were at first." Pilate replied, "Take guards and secure it the best you can." So they sealed the tomb and posted guards to protect it. Early on Sunday morning, as the new day was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went out to see the tomb. Suddenly there was a great earthquake, because an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and rolled aside the stone and sat on it. His face shone like lightning, and his clothing was as white as snow. The guards shook with fear when they saw him, and they fell into a dead faint. Then the angel spoke to the women. "Don't be afraid," he said. "I know you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He isn't here. He has been raised from the dead, just as he said would happen. Come, see where his body was lying. And now go quickly and tell his disciples he has been raised from the dead, and he's going ahead of you to Galilee. You will see him there. Remember, I have told you so." And the women quickly run to tell the disciples. Now, this is a powerful story that we all have heard for a long, long time. And I want us to look at some of these qualities of being that we will need if we're going to follow that Christ energy and spirit into this great awakening and resurrection. If we're going to be able to rise up above all of life's limitations, then we might glean what is in this story and how we can use it and apply it to our lives. First of all, we have Joseph of Arimathea. And he goes to Pilate and he claims the body of Jesus. And he begins to place it in his own new tomb. A tomb that was carved out of the rock. And then he rolls a great stone across the entrance. And the Marys are nearby watching. Now, the Hebrew meaning of the name Joseph, because there's many Josephs in the Bible, right? We know of Joseph in the Old Testament, Joseph, the young person with many colors. You have Joseph, the one who took Mary. But Joseph, the Hebrew name, means this. It means whom Jehovah will add to, or Jehovah shall increase progressively. Right? So Joseph means whom Jehovah will add to, or Jehovah shall increase, and increase what? Progressively. There's a progression to this increasing. Now, metaphysically, because there's a difference between the Hebrew meaning of the name, and metaphysically, the name Joseph represents this. It says that in the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary that Joseph is a state of consciousness in which we increase in character along all lines. And we not only grow into a broader understanding, but it says there is an increase of vitality and substance. So metaphysically, Joseph means that there's an increase somewhere along the lines and all levels of vitality and substance. Now, this is very important for us to understand because we can see from both of these definitions why Jesus was placed in the new tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, right? Because it had to do with an increase of what? Vitality and substance. Substance is the stuff of God. That which stands below and back of behind of everything is the Spirit of God. So Joseph means this increase and a progressive increase. So this is very important because he's placed in this new tomb, not an old tomb, not a tomb that somebody had used, but a new tomb, right? For what? New vitality, new substance, new energy. So he's placed in that for a purpose and a reason. Now, the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary says Joseph of Arimathea, because there are many Josephs, but Joseph of Arimathea signifies this. It is the imaging faculty functioning on a high plane of consciousness. I'm going to say it again. Joseph of Arimathea is and represents the imaging faculty, our ability to image in the image, functioning on a very high plane of consciousness, because Arimathea also means height. So this is important because it talks about the imaging faculty. That's what Joseph of Arimathea, in a high plane of consciousness. Now, what's the highest image of man? What is the highest image of man? We are made in the image and after the likeness of what? Of God. And that image, that pattern is called what? The Christ. Right? And so he's placed in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, that place where the imaging is taking place in a high consciousness. And this is powerful because in this place, Jesus is raising his image to what? To the Christ. He's raising his image to I like to say he went into the tomb as Jesus and came out as the Christ. Right? Raise that vibration, raise that image, and we too are made in the image and after the likeness. We have that pattern within us that can be raised up from our humanity into our spirituality, into our spiritual nature. And so this is a very significant happening for Jesus. He's placed in the tomb of Arimathea, and the tomb of Arimathea represents what? A high place in consciousness. Now, no doubt Jesus needed to be what? In a high place in consciousness for what he was about to do. He needed to be in a high place in consciousness for what he was about to overcome. He needed to be able to raise his consciousness to the highest level of truth and spiritual power. And he needed the time to do that because Joseph meant what? Increase, progressive increase. So he's in the tomb, raising his vibration, raising his consciousness, raising this new tomb into a new expression and a new image and a new creation. He needed to get greater vitality and greater energy and greater strength and greater substance, the stuff of God. Now, I got fascinated with this whole concept of a tomb because I wanted you to know that it says here that the tomb was carved out of rock. It's a rock, and it must be big enough for an entrance to be made and a place. So the tomb is carved out of rock. Now, a rock spiritually signifies strong faith. Solid as a what? Solid as a rock. And remember, Jesus said to Peter, he said, upon this rock, I will what? Build my church. And Peter represents what? Faith. So upon this faith, I'm going to build my church, upon this rock. And so this tomb was carved out of rock, meaning it's carved out of faith that was needed for Jesus to be able to do what he needed to do within himself. Strong faith, right? To make this great demonstration of life over death. I call that's the first demonstration. And as I was sitting here right there on that pew, I used the words, the second greatest demonstration is bringing heaven upon earth. The second greatest demonstration is what we are all going to do. When we raise our consciousness, we're going to change the vibration on this earth. That's going to be the second great demonstration. Yeah. But the first one is this overcoming of life over death. Great faith is needed, and the time to do that. Now, I looked up the metaphysical definition of a tomb, and it said in the revealing word that a tomb is a resting place. A resting place. But I want you to know that this was no idle resting. This wasn't just whiling the time away while in the tomb. This was a resting in God time. It was a resting in the energy and the spirit and the presence and power. Jesus was resting in the presence of God, right? Gathering. He was resting and at the same time gathering the power that was needed to make this demonstration, gathering his inner strength to do what he was about to do. So the resting was coming apart for a while, being shut off from every limitation, everything in the outer, so that he could then gather all of the vital energy and the substance that was needed, right? So that this new life could flow into him, into his life on a new level. Because life has different levels. And he needed to be in a new, higher level of life, an expression of life. And so he was gathering his energy while in this tomb, not resting, but resting upon and in and through God. Taking the time, the increase of vital energy progressively. Now, this is a symbol for us too, because I don't know, have you ever had challenging days, or we've all had maybe what we might even call a crucifixion experience of sort? Right? We've had those, or we've had those experiences that seem to take everything out of us, that just leave us empty, and we have nothing else to give, and we're in despair. We've had low points, and we've all had that. But when we are in the midst of those times, those are very crucial times. Usually, we either fall apart as opposed to coming apart. See, we don't want to necessarily fall apart, but those are the times that we need to somehow be able to gather our energy and our strength, right? The strength of our spirit, so that we can rise above the limitations, rise above the challenges, rise above the situations. And in order to do that, we need to rest in a high place. We need to rest in a high consciousness, so that we could gather the strength. Usually when we're in those places, we just, flail around sometimes, and maybe we run here, we run there. Do you have the help I need? Or, Reverend, could you pray for me? Can you do this? All that's great, but sometimes you need to be still. And you need to go within. And you need to rest in the presence and power of God. And let God do the work on your spirit and your soul. And when you're in this resting place, we also need what I call the Marys. You need the Marys, you see. Because if you notice in all the telling, if you go back and you read this story, in every telling of Jesus' miraculous overcoming and his experience, the Marys were there. They were with Jesus throughout his travels. It says that they ministered and they served unto him. They ministered unto him throughout his experience. The Marys were always there, whether it was Mary Magdalene, Mary his mother, Mary of Bethany, and the other Mary, whoever she might be. But the Marys were always with him, and they were with him at the foot of the cross. They were with him watching at the tomb when Joseph placed that stone. They were with him there. And they were with him showing up on Sunday morning. They said, let's go to the tomb to see the tomb. Now, some versions said they were going to prepare his body, but this one says they were going to see the tomb. They'd already seen it. But they were there, right? And the tomb was sealed and guarded by the soldiers. Now, the Marys represent great love and devotion, right? Commitment. They were committed to Jesus the Christ, committed to his walk, committed to his purpose, committed to his mission. We get a lot with the disciples, but the Marys, they never left. They never abandoned him. They were there every step of the way. Great love and great devotion. And you see, it was that very love and devotion that the Marys had that caused the angel to come down and shake. It says, shake. It shook the earth by an earthquake and shook the foundation of the earth. It was their what? Their love, their devotion, their commitment that shook the foundation, that enabled the angel to simply roll away that stone so that they could go in. That's powerful. Because we all have stuff that we're stuck in. We all have earthly things that we wonder, how are we going to get this out of our life? How are we going to move this out the way? Right? But when you have the love and the devotion of the Christ for the Christ, that energy is enough to call down the angels of heaven, a high consciousness that will move the stone for you, that will roll it away. Right? It'll shake the foundation, because sometimes your life needs to be shaken up. I'm all shook up. Sometimes I got to shake it off. Right? All that limitation, all that negativity, all that doubt, shake it off, shake up the foundation of the earth so that the heaven, the high consciousness, the angels can come in and do a mighty work. And roll that stone away. Now I want you to know there's a difference between a rock and a stone spiritually. Because the tomb was carved out of the rock. A rock of what? Faith, solid. And then Joseph rolled a stone, it said, in front of its entrance. And sometimes we have to make a decision whether we're going to be standing on a rock of solid faith or whether we're going to succumb to a stone in our way. Because sometimes, you see, you can use it if you understand how to work with life. You can make those stones a stepping stone. Right? If you understand that you're standing on the rock of faith, you can turn those stones into stepping stones, or they can be stumbling blocks. Stones on your path can be your stumbling blocks. It all depends upon who? You. It depends upon your consciousness. It depends upon your faith. It depends upon, are you going to stand on the rock of faith, or are you going to let these rocks, these stones in your path become your stumbling blocks? Or do you know how to move the stones out of your way and let them be stepping stones? It's all up to you. But what's needed, I believe, is some faith, some love, and devotion. Because with love and faith, you can do anything. That's a winning combination there. Love, devotion, and faith. And when we allow ourselves to express those qualities within our consciousness, you call down the angels to roll that stone. When you got enough faith and you have enough love for the Christ, you call down the angel, that high consciousness that will give you exactly what you need to remove any limitation, anything that's keeping you from showing up and manifesting as your glorious, power-filled self, as a spiritual being, as the Christ of God. I had to do that this morning. I woke up. Sometimes you wake up and you got stuff on your heart, and it was just, I was in a funky place. And I said, I do not need and want to be in this place. I need a new perspective. And so I got myself together, and I raised my consciousness to the truth that I know. And while I was in that place, Spirit began to touch my heart, and boom, it was gone. It was gone. I could have let it be a stumbling block, but I decided, you got to go. This is Easter Sunday, resurrection morning. I need to be open and happy and joyous. And in that moment, God changed my perspective, because I was like, well, the what ifs and what about that? And all of a sudden I had a new vision, new thoughts, new energy. Yeah, this is possible. And my spirit was just lifted. See, we have to do that for ourselves. It's there, it's for us. So what's standing in your way? What is standing in your way? What is standing in your way? You have to be able to affirm through the resurrecting power of Christ, I can roll that stone. Yes. What is in your way? What is it that you want to overcome? You need to affirm through the resurrecting power of Christ, I can roll that stone. You got a bad prognosis? Through the resurrecting power of Christ, I'm going to roll that stone. Yes. You can do that. There's nothing that you can allow yourself to succumb to out here. Because greater is he that is within you than anything that is in the world. And so we have to understand we're going to hit this world boldly and bravely. So whatever it is we're facing, do not be afraid to go within. See, don't be afraid to entomb yourself. Entomb yourself in the presence and power. See, we look at the tomb was not a grave. The tomb wasn't a grave. He was entombed in that high place so that he was gathering what? Energy. So you need to entomb yourself, meaning don't be afraid to go within. Go within and rest in that presence. Rest in the power. Touch that place of spirit. Gather that strength. Gather that vitality. Gather that energy, the substance of God in that entombment. Get your guidance. Get your direction. You'll hear it. You will get it. It will come if you allow yourself to be present. Yes. Don't be afraid of the tomb. That's your place, your sacred, powerful place. That's the place where life dwells in you. That's the place you're shutting everything out. I'm going within. And when you do that, you got to stay close. Be like the Marys. Stay close to the Christ. They were never too far away. Stay close to the Christ within you. And that will continue to bless you. Believe in this resurrecting power. Believe in it. With love and devotion, you can cause the angels of heaven, of your high consciousness, right, to remove any obstacle, any limitation, and any stone upon your path. And when you do that, you'll be the first. You'll have a first-hand experience. See, the Marys were the first ones who witnessed the resurrecting Christ, right? So when we are in that place, in that tomb, and feeling that love and compassion, getting guidance and direction and revelation and being bolded up in our spirit, you'll have a first-hand experience, an overcoming, resurrecting presence and power that is the Christ in you that will raise you up. The risen Christ is here in you. It is here in you today. Be not afraid of anything or anyone. With faith, love, and of course devotion, and through that resurrecting power, you can roll that stone. And when you roll that stone, your freedom and your victory are at hand. Happy Resurrection Day. Happy Resurrection Day. Roll that stone.